I was standing at the kitchen counter, holding the knife I had used to slice apples for my grandchildren earlier that afternoon. The smell of cinnamon still lingered in the air, a reminder of the pies I had baked, the same way I had for decades. My hands trembled as I gripped the counter, not because of age, but because of the words my children had just thrown at me. "We never asked you to sacrifice," my daughter said, her eyes sharp, her voice louder than I had ever heard it. "You chose this life, not us." Her words cut deeper than the knife I was holding. My son stood beside her, his silence agreeing with every cruel sentence she delivered. The same children I had raised with every ounce of my strength, the same children I had put ahead of myself, were looking at me as though I was nothing more than an old woman, in their way. At that moment, I wanted to scream. I wanted to remind them of the nights I worked double shifts while my body ached, of the meals I skipped so they could have full plates, of the vacations I never took so their dreams could be paid for. But I said nothing, because when your children stand in front of you and strip away your worth, no words can mend the wound. If you are watching this, stay with me until the end. This is not just my story. It could be the story of any parent who gave everything, only to be told it was never wanted. And if you know what it feels like to give too much, subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? The room was quiet, except for the sound of the clock ticking on the wall. Each second felt like a hammer pounding against my chest. My son finally spoke, his tone calm, almost rehearsed. "Mom, you need to stop holding your sacrifices over our heads. We never asked for them. You're not our burden." A burden. That was the word he chose. I had spent years convincing myself that my love, my work, my endless nights of worry were proof of my value. And in one sentence, my son reduced it all to the weight of a burden. By my vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. I thought back to when he was 10 years old and fell from his bike, blood covering his knees. He had looked up at me, frightened, and I had whispered, "Don't worry, I'll always be here to take care of you." And I had kept that promise. Every single day of his life, I had kept it, until now. I turned away from them and looked at the photographs lining the wall. Smiling faces from birthdays, Christmas mornings, graduations. In each one, I saw the reflection of a woman who had believed her love was enough. I saw a younger version of myself who believed sacrifice would build loyalty, and now, staring at those same faces in real life, I realized I had been wrong. My daughter's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. "Stop acting like you gave up your life for us. You didn't have to. You chose it." The words echoed in my mind like a cruel chorus. Chose it, as if I had chosen hunger, exhaustion, loneliness, as if I had chosen to carry the weight of 2 jobs while their father left us behind, as if I had chosen to age before my time just to see them thrive. Something inside me cracked. For the first time in years, I felt anger instead of patience. I felt strength instead of weakness. I put the knife down and turned to face them. "You're right," I said softly, my voice steady. "I did choose this life. I chose you. Every day, every hour, I chose you. And today, I will make another choice." Their eyes met mine, confusion flickering for just a moment before arrogance replaced it. They thought they had won. They thought I would bow my head and accept their cruelty. They had no idea what was coming. Inside my chest, a storm was building. A decision was forming that would not only change my life but theirs as well. And it would be the cruelest decision I had ever made. Stay with me, because what I did next shocked even me. The confrontation ended without resolution. My children stormed out of the kitchen, muttering about how dramatic I was being. The sound of the front door slamming was final. Like the closing of a chapter, I sat at the table, the half-eaten apple slices untouched, the cinnamon pies cooling in silence. My house, once filled with laughter, felt like a tomb. I pressed my palms together and closed my eyes. I could still hear their words. "We never asked you to sacrifice." That night I went to my bedroom and opened the drawer where I kept my most important documents. The will I had written years ago was there, neatly folded in a blue envelope. My pen hovered above it as tears blurred my vision. This was not just paper. This was my life's work, my sacrifices, my legacy. And in that moment, I knew exactly what to do, but not yet. Because the cruelest decisions are not made in haste. They are made in silence, in darkness, when the heart has finally broken enough to stop pleading and start acting. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed every sacrifice, every decision I had made for them. I remembered the winter when the heater broke. I wore 2 coats inside the house so they could sleep with the only space heater in their room. I remembered the summer I skipped paying the electricity bill so I could afford the dance lessons my daughter had begged for. I remembered the way I never bought myself new clothes, just patched old ones so my son could have brand new shoes for school. They did not see those things, or maybe they saw them but decided they never mattered. The bitterness rose in my throat like bile. They were grown now, successful, standing tall on the foundation I had built with my sacrifices. And yet, they looked down at me as if I had done nothing. The cruelty of it was unbearable. I rose from bed, unable to sleep. In the quiet of the house, I walked down the hallway, my hand brushing against the wall where their childhood drawings were still framed. Crayon scribbles, stick figures, hearts, with "I love you, Mom" written in shaky letters. They had once loved me without condition. What had changed? Or maybe the better question was, what had not changed? Perhaps I had loved them too much, given too much, sacrificed so much that they grew to believe sacrifice was normal, expected, unremarkable. They never saw it as love. They saw it as duty, and duty never earns gratitude. The thought chilled me. Back in the kitchen, I sat again at the table, staring at the pies. Tomorrow, they would come back for their children. They would smile at me as though nothing had happened. They would expect me to babysit, to cook, to smile, to keep being the woman who gave and gave. But tomorrow would not be the same. I thought about what I had whispered to them earlier, and today, I will make another choice. They had not listened. They thought it was an empty threat. It was not. For decades, my choices had been about them. Tomorrow, my choice would be about me. I folded the will back into the envelope, but this time, it felt heavier in my hand. Like a weapon, like a shield. The cruelest decision was already inside me, and it was waiting to be set free. And when it was, my children would finally know the true cost of saying, "We never asked you to sacrifice." The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains as if the world outside dared to shine, even though my world had cracked in half. I woke up in the same bed I had slept in for decades, but I did not feel like the same woman. Something had shifted inside me. My children's words had cut so deeply that the wound would never heal. I moved slowly, deliberately, as if every action was part of a ceremony. I brushed my hair, folded my nightgown neatly on the chair, and buttoned my blouse with steady hands. There was a calmness in me, but beneath it raged a fire that had been waiting far too long to burn. When I walked into the kitchen, the pies were still sitting on the counter, cold now, forgotten, much like me. I pushed them aside and sat down. At the table, I had not eaten since yesterday, but I was not hungry. I was determined my children would return today, not for me, but for their children. They would walk in with fake smiles, pretending the conversation from last night never happened. They would hand me their little ones and expect me to babysit for free, as if my time had no value, as if I existed only for their convenience. Not today. If you are still listening, lean closer, because what I am about to tell you is the moment where everything began to change. And I want you to ask yourself honestly, if your children treated you this way, would you have done what I did next? Subscribe and tell me in the comments, because I need to know if I was wrong, or if I was finally brave enough to do what every broken-hearted parent secretly dreams of. The doorbell rang around noon. My daughter's voice floated through the hallway before I even opened the door. "Mom, we're dropping the kids for a few hours. We have plans." Plans. They always had plans. Plans that required my silence, my labor, my sacrifice. I opened the door and saw her standing there with her perfect hair, her expensive purse, her impatient eyes. My grandchildren rushed in, hugging me tightly, their innocent laughter filling the house for a moment. For them, I smiled. For them, I softened. But when I looked back at my daughter, my smile faded. "We need to talk," I said firmly. She rolled her eyes. "Not again, Mom. Please don't start." Inside, I insisted. She sighed and stepped in, my son trailing behind her. They stood in the living room, crossing their arms, already annoyed, already certain I would back down, like I always did. "I thought about what you said last night," I began, my voice steady, stronger than I expected. "You told me I chose this life, that I made sacrifices you never asked for, and you are right. I did choose. I chose you every single time. But last night, I made another choice. one that will change everything. They shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other. My son muttered, "Here we go." I ignored him. I walked over to the drawer in the corner cabinet and pulled out the blue envelope. Their eyes followed it, suspicion flickering in their faces. I placed it on the table between us. "This," I said, tapping the envelope, "is my will. Everything I have worked for, every penny, every possession, every piece of my life's effort, is written inside here. Until last night, it was written in your names. But you told me you never asked me to sacrifice. You told me I was your burden. So today, I am removing that burden. Today, I am making sure you never carry it." Their faces froze. Shock rippled through them, though they tried to hide it. My daughter's lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. My son's jaw tightened. "You cannot be serious," he finally said. "I am very serious," I replied. "I have given everything to you while I was alive, and you spat in my face. I will not give you the power to erase me when I am gone. From this day forward, you will not be written into my will. Not 1 cent. Not 1 brick of this house. Nothing." The silence that followed was louder than any scream. My daughter finally found her voice. "Mom, that is insane. You cannot just erase us because of one argument. We are your children." I laughed, a hollow sound that surprised even me. "Children? Do children call their mother a burden? Do children spit on the very sacrifices that raised them? No, you are not children anymore. You are strangers wearing the faces of people I once loved." Their anger began to rise. My son's voice turned sharp. "You're being dramatic. You are punishing us for telling you the truth. That is childish." I stepped closer, meeting his gaze without fear. "No, Bradley, this is not punishment. This is liberation. You freed me last night with your words. You said you never asked for my sacrifices, so I am done giving them. You said I was a burden, so I will no longer burden you with the weight of my legacy. Consider yourselves free." My daughter's voice cracked with disbelief. "So who will you leave it to? Some charity? Strangers?" I paused, letting the question hang in the air. 100 possibilities rushed through my mind. Charities for single mothers, shelters for abandoned women, scholarships for children who actually needed someone to believe in them. Anyone but the two standing in front of me. "I will leave it," I said slowly, "to someone who knows the value of sacrifice." Their faces darkened. They wanted to argue, to fight, to drag me back into the cage of guilt I had lived in for years. But I was not that woman anymore. At that moment, my grandchildren came running back into the room, holding their toys, their smiles innocent and unknowing. My daughter quickly grabbed their hands, muttering, "Come on, kids, we are leaving." She glared at me as she walked past. "You will regret this." Maybe I would, but regret was something I had lived with for too long already. The door slammed shut, and once again, silence filled the house. But this silence was different. It was not heavy with shame or sorrow. It was sharp, purposeful, filled with the echo of freedom. That night, I sat at the table again, the envelope still in front of me. I opened it carefully and read the words I had written years ago. Tears blurred my vision, but my hand was steady. As I began to cross out their names, every letter I erased felt like peeling back a layer of pain. Every stroke of the pen was a declaration that I was no longer their servant, no longer their shadow, no longer their silent provider. I was free, but with freedom came fear. I stared at the paper, wondering if I was truly strong enough to follow through. Could I really leave my children with nothing? Could I truly make the cruelest decision a mother could ever make? Yes, because they had already made theirs. The next day, I called my lawyer. His voice was professional, calm, but I could hear the surprise when I explained what I wanted. "Are you sure?" he asked carefully. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life," I said. When I hung up the phone, my hands were shaking. But it was not weakness, it was power. The kind of power I had never felt before. For decades, my life had belonged to them. Now, for the first time, it belonged to me. If you are still listening, know this. Every sacrifice has a limit. Every heart can break only so many times before it turns to stone. Do you think I was wrong? Would you have forgiven your children? Or would you have done what I did? Tell me in the comments, because I need to know if I am alone in this. And if you believe no parent should ever be called a burden, share this story because someone else needs to hear it. This was only the beginning. The cruelest decision was still unfolding. and soon, my children would understand what it truly meant to dismiss the sacrifices of a mother. Asterisk. The days after my decision were filled with a strange kind of stillness. The air in the house felt lighter, as if the walls themselves had been waiting for me to break free. I moved differently now. I did not shuffle around like someone waiting to be called upon. I walked with intention. I poured my coffee slowly, savoring it, not gulping it down before a grandchild woke up or a child barged in with demands. But peace never lasts when you live among people who cannot stand to lose control. It began with phone calls. At first they were polite. My son rang me one morning, his voice stiff, professional almost. "Mom, listen, about what you said the other day. I think we should sit down and talk about it. You're emotional, that's all. You didn't mean what you said." "I meant every word," I replied. There was silence. Then his tone hardened. "You don't want to do something you'll regret. Think about the kids. Think about the kids." Always the children, used as shields, as weapons. My grandchildren were innocent, but their parents wielded them like bargaining chips. I said nothing more and hung up. The next day my daughter called. Her voice was softer, but no less manipulative. "Mom, I know you're hurt, but you cannot actually believe leaving us out of your will is fair. We're your family. We've been there for you. Have you?" I asked quietly. "Were you there last Christmas, when I set the table for 6 and only 2 chairs were filled? Were you there on my birthday, when I sat alone with a cake I baked myself? Were you there last week when you called me a burden? Tell me, darling, when exactly were you there?" She faltered. Her mask cracked. "Mom, you're twisting things. You always do this." I felt the sting of her words, but I refused to let them sink in. "No," I said firmly. "This time, I am not twisting anything. I am finally straightening what has been broken for far too long." She hung up without another word. A storm was gathering. Though I could not yet see it, I only felt it in the shift of the air, the way silence grew heavier, the way neighbors began to look at me differently, as if whispers had already started spreading. By the end of the week, the storm arrived. I was in the garden, trimming the roses, when a car pulled up. Both of them stepped out together, united like an army ready for war. My son's face was tense, his jaw locked. My daughter's eyes were sharp, already calculating. "Mom," my son said, his voice low but firm, "we need to talk, now." I stood among my roses, the shears still in my hand. "Then talk, not out here, inside," he insisted. I led them into the living room. The same room where, years ago, we had sat together reading bedtime stories, playing board games, celebrating birthdays. Now it was a battlefield. They stood across from me, their arms folded like shields. "You're being manipulated," my daughter started. "Some lawyer or some outsider has gotten into your head." "Mom, this is not you. You wouldn't do this to us." I almost laughed at the irony. "No one has gotten into my head, dear. For the first time in years, I am finally thinking clearly." My son slammed his hand on the table. "Do you even understand what you're doing? You are destroying your family. You are ruining your legacy. And for what? Because we were honest with you." "Honest," I repeated, my voice rising. "You call telling your mother she is nothing but a burden honest. You call dismissing decades of sacrifice as if they were scraps of paper honest. If that is honesty, then I want no part of it." Their anger burned hotter, but beneath it I saw fear. They had never imagined I would stand against them. They had built their lives assuming I would always be there, silent and giving, until the end. "Think about the house," my daughter pressed. "Do you know what it's worth? Do you know what it could mean for your grandchildren's future? You cannot just throw that away." "I am not throwing it away," I said calmly. "I am giving it where it will matter, where it will be valued, not to those who treat it like an entitlement, but to those who understand sacrifice." Her face twisted with anger. "You sound cruel." "Cruel," I whispered. Cruel was sitting alone in a hospital bed when I had pneumonia, waiting for a visit that never came. Cruel was cooking meals that went untouched because you never showed up. Cruel was being told, after a lifetime of giving, that none of it was wanted. "If you think I am cruel now, you have never looked in a mirror." The room vibrated with tension. My son took a step closer, lowering his voice. "You don't mean this, Mom. Deep down, you know we are your blood. You cannot cut us out." I straightened my back, lifting my chin. "Watch me." For the first time, I saw real panic in their eyes. My son's hand trembled. My daughter's lips quivered. They had expected anger, maybe even shouting. They had not expected calm, deliberate finality. That night, the phone rang again. I did not answer. Then it rang again, and again. Finally, I picked it up. My daughter's voice hissed through the line. "If you go through with this, you will never see your grandchildren again." My heart clenched. For a moment, my breath caught in my throat. That was the dagger I had feared. The one threat I knew they would use. "Do you hear me?" she continued. "Never. You think you're punishing us, but you'll only punish yourself. You'll die alone." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tightly. Images of my grandchildren's faces filled my mind. Their laughter, their hugs, their small hands in mine. Could I bear losing that? Could I survive never seeing them again? Tears ran down my cheeks. My voice trembled as I replied, "Then you are proving my point. Love is not a weapon. If you use my grandchildren as leverage, then you were never worthy of what I had to give in the first place." She cursed under her breath and hung up. I sat in silence, the phone still in my hand, my tears dripping onto the floor. The cruelest decision had begun to take its toll, but I knew I could not turn back. If you are still here, still listening, I need you to hear me clearly. When a parent stands up for themselves, it is painted as cruelty. When a child abandons their parent, it is painted as freedom. Do you agree? Or am I blinded by my pain? Comment below, because I cannot carry this question alone. The next morning, I did something that even surprised me. I went to the bank. The clerk looked at me kindly as I explained what I wanted. To move my savings into a trust that my children would never touch. To redirect my accounts toward causes I chose. To take control of my life, not just in death, but while I was still breathing. Signing those papers felt like shedding a skin I had worn too long. Every stroke of the pen was an act of defiance, but also an act of survival. When I walked out of that bank, the sun was brighter, the air sharper. I was not just a mother anymore. I was a woman who had drawn a line. But even as I walked home, I knew the storm was far from over. My children would not let go so easily. They would fight. They would scheme. They would claw at the walls of the freedom I had built. And I would be ready. Because once you have been told you were never asked to sacrifice, there is no going back. Asterisk the morning after I signed the papers at the bank, the air in my home felt heavier. The roses outside swayed gently in the breeze, but inside, the walls seemed to lean closer, as if bracing themselves for what was coming. I had declared war without raising my voice, and wars like these are never fought quietly. I was sipping my tea when the knock came, firm, aggressive, the kind of knock that did not ask for permission, but demanded it. I opened the door, and there they were, my son in his crisp suit, my daughter in her designer coat, both standing like prosecutors ready to deliver a verdict. "We need to talk," my son said coldly. I stepped aside. "Then talk." They stormed in, not waiting for an invitation. My daughter set her purse on the table with a thud, her eyes darting around the room, as if searching for evidence. My son remained standing, his arms folded, his presence dominating the room. "Mom," he began, his voice sharp, "we know you went to the bank yesterday. Do you really think we would not find out?" A chill ran down my spine. How did they know? Who had told them? But I kept my face calm, my hands steady around my teacup. "And if I did?" I asked. "You are making reckless decisions," he snapped. "You are not thinking clearly. You are letting emotions drive you, and you are jeopardizing our family's future." "Our family," I repeated softly. "The same family that told me I was nothing but a burden. The same family that dismissed every sacrifice I ever made. Tell me, what future are you protecting? Yours or mine?" My daughter leaned forward, her voice trembling with forced sweetness. "Mom, listen to me. You are being manipulated. Maybe it is that lawyer, maybe someone else, but this is not you. You would never cut your own children out. You raised us better than that." I looked at her long and hard. "I raised you to respect others. I raised you to understand the value of sacrifice. Did I raise you better? Perhaps. But did you learn that I am not so sure?" Her mask cracked, anger slipping through. "You are being vindictive. You are punishing us." "No," I said firmly. "I am protecting myself." The tension in the room thickened until it was nearly choking. My son stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do you understand that if you go through with this, we will contest it? We will take you to court. We will drag your name through every legal process until you break. You cannot just cut us out. The law does not work that way." For a moment, Fear pricked my chest. The thought of lawyers, courtrooms, battles I was too tired to fight. But then I remembered the decades I had spent fighting in silence, fighting loneliness, disrespect, abandonment. Compared to that, no courtroom could scare me. Do what you must, I replied quietly. I will not change my mind. My son's face darkened, but before he could speak again, I continued. Do you know what I find ironic? You both believe my decisions are reckless, but you had no problem when I gave up my dreams for you. You had no problem when I spent nights working overtime to pay for your education. You had no problem when I sacrificed my health, my joy, my life. Then, those sacrifices were convenient. Now, when I choose for myself, suddenly I am reckless. My daughter's hands trembled against her purse. She tried one last tactic. If you do this, Mom, you will regret it. You will die alone. And we will make sure of it. Her words struck like a blade, not because of their truth, but because of their cruelty. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Perhaps I will die alone, I said softly. But better alone than surrounded by people who see me as nothing more than a bank account. The silence after that was unbearable. Finally, my son turned, his voice low and seething. This is not over. They stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. I sank into the chair, my body trembling. The house felt quieter than ever, but not peaceful. It was the quiet after lightning, the moment before thunder cracks across the sky. I knew what was coming. That evening, the phone rang again. When I answered, it was not my children. It was my lawyer. Mrs. Thompson, he said carefully, your children contacted me today. They asked questions about your accounts, about your will. I cannot share details with them, of course, but I want you to be aware they may attempt legal action. I closed my eyes. Thank you for telling me. There is more, he continued. They implied you may not be of sound mind. They may try to challenge your capacity to make these decisions. I need to advise you to document everything. Doctors, witnesses, anything that proves your clarity. For a moment, the room spun. My own children, willing to paint me as senile, just to claw back what they believed was theirs. The betrayal was so sharp it nearly stole my breath, but instead of breaking me, it hardened me. Do what you need to, I told my lawyer. I am ready. When I hung up the phone, I sat in the dark for a long time. The cruelest decision was no longer just a choice of inheritance. It had become a battlefield for my dignity, my identity, my truth. The next day I visited my doctor. I sat through every test, every evaluation, letting them examine my memory, my reasoning, my awareness. When the doctor finally smiled and said, "You are sharper than most people half your age," relief washed over me like sunlight. I asked for the paperwork, proof of my clarity. I folded it carefully into my purse, knowing it was more than paper. It was my shield. When I returned home, I sat by the window, watching the street. My children's cars did not appear that day, but I knew they were planning, scheming. I felt both fear and strength. Fear for the storm they would unleash. Strength because I finally knew I had weapons of my own. That night, I recorded a video, not for them, but for the world. I sat at the table, the camera propped before me. My hands trembled, but my voice did not. My children told me I was a burden. I began. They told me they never asked for my sacrifices. So I made a choice, a cruel choice, perhaps, but one I had to make. I cut them out of my will, and now, they threaten me with courts, with abandonment, with the loss of my grandchildren. But I will not bend, because there comes a time when even a mother must say enough. If you are watching this, tell me, am I wrong, or am I finally free? Subscribe, comment, let me know, because maybe, just maybe, I am not the only one who has lived through this. When I stopped recording, I felt lighter. I was not just telling my story, I was reclaiming my voice. Days later, my children returned. This time, they did not knock. They barged in with papers in their hands. Legal threats, custody warnings, accusations of instability. They laid them out on the table, their voices raised, their faces twisted. "This is your last chance, Mom," my son shouted. "Sign everything back, or we go to court." I looked at the papers. I looked at the faces of the two people I had once loved more than life itself. And then I tore the papers in half. "You already went to war with me," I said calmly. "Now you will see how far I can go, how far I can go." Their eyes widened, their mouths opened in shock. And in that moment, I realized the cruelest decision was not about money, or wills, or houses. It was about love. About finally choosing myself after a lifetime of choosing them. They stormed out once more, but this time, I did not tremble. I stood taller, stronger. The battle was only beginning, and I was ready. If you are still listening, tell me, would you have stood your ground, or would you have given in to the threats of your own children? Am I cruel, or am I finally brave? Comment below, and do not forget to subscribe, because what happens next will shake everything you thought you knew about family, loyalty, and betrayal. Asterisk, I always believed the fiercest battles were fought on distant fields with soldiers and flags. I never imagined my fiercest battle would be fought inside cold courtrooms and warm living rooms, against the very children I once cradled in my arms. The day the summons arrived, I was standing in the garden watering my roses. The postman handed me the envelope with a sympathetic look, as though he already knew what was inside. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Legal documents. My children had done it. They were challenging my will, claiming I was of unsound mind, claiming I was unfit to make decisions about my own life. For a moment, the world spun. To see those words on paper, signed by the two people I had given everything to, was like being struck by lightning. I sat down on the garden bench, the papers fluttering in my lap, and for the first time in weeks, tears streamed down my face. They were not fighting me for love. They were fighting me for property, for money, for control, and they were willing to drag me through the mud to get it. If you are listening now, I want you to answer me honestly. If your children branded you unstable, if they tried to erase your voice in order to steal what was yours, what would you do? Tell me in the comments, because this is not just my story. It could be yours too. I called my lawyer immediately. He was calm, prepared, as though he had expected this. Do not worry, Mrs. Thompson, he said. We anticipated this move. You have your medical evaluation. You have your testimony. We will fight this. But it was not just about legal battles. It was about dignity. The thought of sitting in a courtroom, of strangers analyzing my sanity, of my children smirking across the aisle, filled me with dread. Yet deep inside, there was also steel. I would not let them strip me of my truth. The weeks leading up to the hearing were some of the loneliest of my life. My phone rang often, but never with kindness. Neighbors whispered. Some avoided me entirely, as though siding with me would ignite the wrath of my children. Others looked at me with pity, as if they believed the lies being spread that at night. I sat alone at my kitchen table, the legal documents stacked beside me. I read them over and over, my eyes stinging, my heart aching. Words like incapacitated and unfit tore at me, because once upon a time, those children had called me strong. Once upon a time, they had trusted me to guide them. Now they wanted the world to believe I was nothing but a fragile old woman. The day of the hearing arrived. I dressed carefully, choosing a navy dress and pearls, not because I wanted to look wealthy, but because I wanted to look dignified. As I stood in front of the mirror, I whispered to my reflection, "They will not take this from you. Not today." When I entered the courthouse, my children were already there. My daughter sat with her arms folded, her lips pressed tightly together, her eyes darting toward me with cold triumph. My son stood beside her, his suit sharp, his posture confident, as though he had already won. Seeing them like that, united not in love but in greed, nearly broke me, but I lifted my chin and walked past them without a word. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick with tension. My lawyer spoke first, laying out the facts, my years of independence, my recent medical evaluation, my clear capacity to make decisions. He presented evidence calmly, methodically, like a man building a fortress, brick by brick. Then it was their turn. Their lawyer stood, his voice dripping with false concern. "Your Honor, my clients are deeply worried about their mother. They love her dearly, but recent erratic behavior has caused them concern for her well-being. They only wish to protect her from making reckless decisions that could harm her family's future." I nearly laughed aloud. Love, concern, protect. Those words tasted bitter in my mouth. My daughter took the stand. Her voice trembled, tears glistening in her eyes. "My mother has changed. She has become cold, distant. She pushes us away, makes rash decisions. This is not the woman who raised us. We fear she is being manipulated, and we fear for her safety." Her performance was convincing. I could see the judge watching her closely, nodding slightly. My chest tightened. Then my son spoke. His voice was steady, authoritative. My mother has always been emotional, but lately she has been unstable. She talks about giving away everything to strangers, about abandoning her family. We are worried she is not capable of managing her affairs responsibly. Every word was a dagger. To hear them reduce me to a caricature of weakness, to watch them paint me as unfitted, was almost unbearable. Finally, it was my turn. I stood slowly, my knees trembling, but my voice did not shake. Your Honor, I began. For more than 30 years, I have lived for my children. I worked 3 jobs to put them through school. I sold my jewelry to pay their tuition. I cooked meals they never ate. I sat alone at holidays they never attended, and I gave every ounce of my life to them. They told me I was a burden. They told me they never asked for my sacrifices. And now, because I finally chose to live for myself, they stand here trying to silence me. The courtroom was silent. Even the judge leaned forward. I pulled out the envelope from my purse, the medical evaluation signed by my doctor. I handed it to the clerk. I am of sound mind. I am clear. I am capable. And I choose to give my legacy not to those who despise me, but to those who will honor it. My daughter's face reddened. My son's jaw tightened. For the first time, cracks appeared in their confidence. The judge read through the papers, nodding slowly. Then he looked at my children. Your mother is competent. She is within her rights to make her own decisions. Unless you have further evidence, this case is closed. The gavel struck, just like that. Their attempt had failed. As we walked out of the courtroom, my son hissed in my ear, "This is not the end. You will regret this." I turned to him, meeting his glare with steady eyes. "No, Bradley. For the first time, I will not." They stormed past me, their heels echoing angrily against the marble floor. I stood in the sunlight outside the courthouse, the weight of victory heavy but liberating on my shoulders. But victory in court was not the end. It was only another beginning. That evening, I returned home, exhausted but unbroken. I sat at my table staring at the papers I had fought so hard to protect. My children were relentless. They would try again, perhaps through lies, perhaps through manipulation. But I was no longer afraid, because in that courtroom, I had learned something powerful. I had learned that even stripped of their loyalty, I was still strong. Even when branded as a burden, I was still worthy. Even when my children tried to erase me, I still had a voice. If you are still listening, hear me now. No one has the right to silence you, not even the ones you gave life to. If you believe I was right to fight back, share this story. If you believe no mother should ever be forced to prove her sanity to her own children, comment below. Because I need to know I am not standing alone in this fight. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, but deep inside, I knew the cruelest decision was not yet finished. My children had failed in court, but they would not stop. Their hunger for control was too deep. And soon, I would face a choice even harder than cutting them out of my will, because they would not come for my money next. They would come for my heart. The morning after the courtroom victory, I woke with a rare feeling of peace. The sun filtered gently through my curtains, and for a moment I believed the storm had passed. I had defended my dignity. I had proven my strength, and I thought perhaps my children would finally accept the truth. But peace in my life had become a fragile thing, lasting only as long as it took for the phone to ring. I answered without looking. At the caller ID, a small, trembling voice whispered on the other end, "Grandma." My heart leaped. It was Lily, my granddaughter. Her voice was soft, hesitant, but unmistakable. I had not heard it in months. "Lily," I breathed, clutching the phone tighter. "Oh, sweetheart, I've missed you so much. How are you all right?" There was a pause, then a hurried whisper. "Grandma, I want to see you, but Mommy says I can't. She says you don't love us anymore." Is that true? The words hit harder than any courtroom accusation. My throat tightened. "No, Lily, that is not true. I love you more than anything in this world. Never believe otherwise. Do you understand me?" Before she could answer, I heard a voice in the background. My daughter's voice, sharp, controlling. "Who are you talking to, Lily?" The line went dead. The line went dead. I stood frozen, the silence buzzing in my ear. My children had failed in the courtroom, so now they were turning to something crueler. They were using the grandchildren, the purest bond I had left, as weapons in their war. If you are listening to me now, tell me honestly, If someone you loved more than life itself was being turned against you, if innocent children were being used as pawns, how far would you go to fight back? Comment below, because I need to know how others would survive. The days that followed were torture. I received no more calls, no more messages. My house felt emptier than ever. I began leaving the porch light on at night, foolishly hoping Lily or her little brother might sneak over, might find their way to me. Instead, what came were more letters, not legal summons this time, but poisonous notes slipped into my mailbox. Stop poisoning the children's minds. You chose strangers over family. Stay away or you'll lose them forever. Each letter was unsigned, but I knew the handwriting. My daughter's neat cursive, my son's bold slant. They were united in their cruelty now, determined to cut me off from the only source of joy left in my life. I sat at my kitchen table, the notes spread before me like venomous snakes. My chest ached with every beat. My grandchildren, the ones I had baked cookies with, told stories to, tucked in during sleepovers, were being taught to fear me. I wanted to fight back, to storm their homes, to shout my truth into their faces. But another voice inside me whispered, caution. If I pushed too hard, they would punish me the only way they could, by keeping the children from me forever. Then came the invitation, or rather, the cruel parody of one. An email arrived from my daughter, short and smug. We are celebrating Lily's birthday this weekend. Of course, you are not invited. You made your choice. Attached was a photo. My granddaughter stood in a new dress, a cake glowing before her, but her eyes looked sad, her smile forced. I stared at that photo for hours. My hands shook, not with weakness but with rage. How dare they use her happiness as a weapon? How dared they flaunt it in front of me, knowing I would not be there to sing her name, to kiss her cheek, to place a gift in her hand? That night I sat alone in my garden, the stars cold above me. My mind was torn in two. One side whispered that I must endure, that I must wait, that someday the children would come back to me on their own. The other side screamed that waiting was weakness, that if I did not act now, they would erase me from the grandchildren's lives completely. And then the cruelest thought of all entered my mind. Perhaps my children were right in one sense. Perhaps I had sacrificed too much, given too much, and in doing so I had trained them to see me not as a person but as a resource that could be drained, discarded, and replaced. If I wanted to change this, I could not simply beg for their love. I had to shatter the pattern entirely. The breaking point came a week later. I was at the grocery store when I spotted Lily and her brother at the far end of an aisle. They were with my daughter, who was busy talking to a neighbor. For a fleeting moment, the children were unattended. Lily saw me first. Her eyes widened, then softened. She took a small step toward me. My heart soared. "Grandma," she whispered. Before I could reach her, my daughter spun around. Her face darkened like a storm cloud. She grabbed Lily's arm and yanked her back. "We talked about this," she snapped. "Stay away from her." The neighbor's eyes darted between us, confusion and discomfort plain on her face. But my daughter did not care. She turned her fury on me. "You will not manipulate them anymore," she spat. "Do you hear me? You are nothing to them now. Nothing." Shoppers nearby paused, staring. My face burned with shame, but I refused to look away. I forced my voice to remain calm, though my insides trembled. "I am still their grandmother," I said. "You cannot erase that." My daughter sneered, pulling the children away. "Watch me." They disappeared down the aisle, leaving me clutching a basket full of groceries I no longer remembered picking up. That night, I reached my decision, the cruelest decision of all. If my children wanted to erase me, then I would give them exactly what they claimed to want. I would vanish from their lives completely. No more letters, no more attempts at reconciliation, no more waiting by the phone for a call that would never come. But vanishing would not mean surrender. It would mean freedom. And with that freedom, I would ensure that the legacy they hungered for would slip forever through their fingers. I spent the following days making arrangements. I met with my lawyer again, finalizing documents not just for my estate, but for something greater, a foundation, a trust in my name, dedicated to supporting children who had no grandparents to fight for them, children abandoned, overlooked, forgotten. My own grandchildren were being turned against me. Then I would pour my love into others who needed it. Children who would not see me as a burden, but as a gift. It was not an act of revenge, though revenge burned hot in my veins. It was an act of survival. an act of reclaiming the love I still had to give. The night before I signed the final papers, I stood once more in my garden. The roses swayed gently in the breeze. I thought of Lily, of her little brother, of the bedtime stories left unfinished, and the birthdays uncelebrated. My heart ached with longing, but I also felt a strange peace. I whispered into the night, "One day, when you are old enough, you will know the truth, and when you do, you will find me. Until then, I will live, not for those who despise me, but for those who need me. If you are still here, tell me, was I right? Should a mother fight until her last breath to hold on, or should she walk away and let the silence speak louder than words?" Share your thoughts below, because I know I am not the only one torn between love and survival. That night, I signed the papers, and with one stroke of a pen, I ensured that my children would never touch the legacy they tried so hard to steal. But what I did not realize was that by cutting them off, I had set into motion a storm far greater than any courtroom battle, because my children, stripped of power and desperate for control, were about to show me just how far they would go, and the war for my soul had only begun. The morning after I signed the final papers, I felt lighter than I had in years. My lawyer's office had smelled of ink and leather, and when my pen left the page, it was as though the weight of my entire family's betrayal had slid from my shoulders. For the first time, I was not the victim. I was the architect of my own fate. But freedom is rarely granted without consequence. By stripping my children of the future they thought belonged to them, I had struck at their pride, their greed, and their sense of control. I should have expected retaliation. I should have known that they would not let me walk away without drawing more blood. It began quietly, almost imperceptibly. A glance from a neighbor, a whisper in the grocery store, the subtle shift of people pulling their children closer when I walked by. I did not understand until one afternoon when a woman I had known for 20 years avoided my greeting entirely. She kept her head down and hurried past me. Confused, I returned home and checked the mailbox. Inside was a letter, one that made my knees buckle beneath me. It was a printed article from a local newsletter. Across the top, in bold letters, were the words, "Grandmother cuts children out of inheritance, abandons family for strangers." My hands trembled as I scanned the paragraphs. It was filled with lies. It painted me as a bitter old woman who despised her own children, who had chosen to give everything to outsiders just to spite her family. It claimed I was unstable, vindictive, and dangerous to be around. And at the bottom, in italics, was the cruelest twist of all. Sources close to the family confirm that the grandchildren are no longer safe in her presence. I dropped the paper, as though it burned me. Safe. They were calling me unsafe. They were branding me as a danger to the very children I had cradled, fed, and protected with my entire soul. I knew immediately who was behind it. My children had lost in the courtroom, they had lost in the estate, and so now they had chosen a new battlefield. Public opinion. If you are watching this, pause for a moment and imagine how it would feel to wake one day and find your reputation shredded, your name dragged through mud, your neighbors looking at you as if you were a monster. Tell me in the comments, would you have the strength to stand tall, or would you collapse under the weight of those lies? The rumors spread like wildfire. At the library where I volunteered, the head librarian gently suggested I take a break. At church, I noticed the pew beside me remained empty no matter how many people filled the rows. At the market, whispers followed me like shadows. Everywhere I turned, the message was the same. I was not welcome. For a while, I stayed silent, believing that the truth would eventually reveal itself. But silence only gave their lies more room to grow. One evening, as I watered my garden, my neighbor Margaret leaned over the fence. She looked uneasy, wringing her hands. "I hate to ask this," she began, "but is it true? Did you really cut your children out of everything? Did you really say you wanted nothing to do with your grandchildren? Her words stung like thorns. I set down the watering can, my voice steady but my heart racing. "No, Margaret, that is not true. I love my grandchildren more than life itself. I never wanted this war, but my children forced my hand. They wanted to erase me, and I had to protect myself." Margaret nodded slowly, but I could see doubt in her eyes. The lies had rooted too deeply. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I received an official notice taped to my front door. It was from Child Protective Services. An anonymous report had been filed against me, accusing me of emotional abuse toward my grandchildren. I sank onto the porch steps, the paper fluttering in my hand. My children had crossed the final line. They were not content with destroying my reputation. They wanted to paint me as a criminal, to strip away the last shred of my identity as a grandmother. When the social worker arrived the next day, I sat in my living room with my hands folded tightly in my lap. I told the truth. I showed photos of birthdays, holidays, school plays. I recounted years of bedtime stories and scraped knees I had bandaged. The worker listened, nodding, scribbling notes. At last she looked up. I see no evidence that you are a danger, but I must warn you. False reports can be just as damaging as real ones. Someone is trying to ruin you. I swallowed hard. I know exactly who it is. That night, I stared at the ceiling, sleep refusing to come. My heart burned with fury, but also with something else. Resolve that my children had declared war in the public square. If they wanted to fight in front of the world, then that is where I would meet them. The next morning, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. My hands shook slightly, but my mind was clear. I created a public post, one that would change everything. It began with the truth. My name is Margaret Thompson. I am a mother and a grandmother. Recently, lies have been spread about me, claiming that I am bitter, unstable, and unsafe for my own grandchildren. I cannot stay silent any longer. This is my story. I wrote of the sacrifices I had made, the nights I stayed awake nursing fevers, the meals I skipped so my children could eat. I wrote of the betrayal, the words that cut me deeper than any knife. We never asked you to sacrifice. I shared how they had taken me to court, tried to steal my home, tried to silence me. I revealed that I had redirected my inheritance not to strangers, but to a foundation that would serve children who truly needed love. Children who would never be told their grandmother was a burden. When I was done, I attached photos, pictures of Lily on my lap, of her brother laughing as I pushed him on a swing, images that showed the bond no rumor could erase. And then I pressed post. The response was immediate. Comments poured in by the hundreds, some from strangers, offering support, some from neighbors, apologizing for believing the lies. You are brave. You are a true grandmother. They don't deserve you. But there were darker comments too, ones clearly written by my children or their allies. You are manipulating everyone. Stop playing the victim. Your own kids don't want you. That says everything. The battle had gone public, and there was no turning back. If you are still with me, I want to ask you something. When family turns into your enemy and spreads lies about you, do you fight them head on, or do you disappear and let silence be your weapon? I need to hear your voice, because silence has nearly destroyed mine. In the days that followed, the tension escalated. My children saw the support I was receiving, and it only enraged them further. My son appeared at my doorstep one evening, his face flushed with anger. "How dare you?" he shouted. "How dare you humiliate us in front of everyone?" I stood tall, my voice firm. The truth humiliates only those who live in lies. His fists clenched. For a moment I feared he might strike me, but instead he spat at the ground and stormed away. I knew then that the war was reaching its peak. Words and rumors would no longer satisfy them. They would come for me in ways more ruthless, more dangerous. But I was no longer afraid, for I had learned something vital in the fire of their betrayal. When a mother has nothing left to lose, she becomes unstoppable. The days after my son stormed off my porch felt like the calm before a storm. The neighborhood was still buzzing with my post, and for the first time in months I walked down the street with my head high. Some people smiled at me again. A few even stopped to say they were sorry for doubting me. It was a small victory, but it felt like a light in the darkness. I should have known that light would draw more shadows. One Thursday morning, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a flyer. My hands shook as I unfolded it and read the words printed across the top in bold black letters. A community forum, the truth about Margaret Thompson. The date was set for the following Saturday. The location was the town hall, and listed as the speakers were my son and daughter. I sank into a chair, the paper fluttering in my trembling hands. They were no longer content to whisper, no longer satisfied with spreading lies behind closed doors. Now they wanted to put me on trial in front of the entire community. For a moment, I thought of staying home, of ignoring the spectacle, but deep down, I knew this was exactly what they were counting on. If I stayed silent, their lies would become the only truth people heard. I would not let that happen. If you are watching this, pause and tell me Your children dragged your name into the public square. If they forced you into a trial of shame, would you stand up and face them, or would you walk away? Comment below, because this is the question that haunted me as I prepared for that Saturday. The night of the forum, I dressed carefully. I chose a navy blue dress, simple but dignified, the same one I had worn to Lily's kindergarten graduation. I pinned a small silver brooch at my collar, a gift from my late husband. I wanted the community to see me not as a villain, not as a victim, but as a woman who had lived, loved, and fought for her family with every breath. The town hall was packed. Rows of folding chairs filled the room, every seat taken. Neighbors, acquaintances, strangers all had come to witness the spectacle. At the front sat my children, flanked by a banner that read, "Protect our families, protect our children." The irony made me sick. When the moderator introduced my son, he rose with the self-importance of a man who believed he was about to win a war. He began calmly, painting himself as a dutiful son, betrayed by a cold, selfish mother. He spoke of sacrifices I had made, but twisted them into accusations. "She did not sacrifice for us out of love," he declared, his voice loud and certain. "She did it for control. And when we grew up and wanted independence, she turned on us." The crowd murmured, heads nodding. My daughter followed, her voice shaking with false emotion. She spoke of my decision to change my will, calling it cruel, vindictive, proof that I never truly loved them. She held up photographs of the grandchildren, saying I was tearing them away from their future, robbing them of what was rightfully theirs. Her words dripped with venom, but her tears were enough to sway the crowd. I saw sympathetic eyes glancing at her, judgmental ones turning toward me. And then came the final blow. She looked straight at me and said, "Our mother is dangerous, not physically, but emotionally. She manipulates, she twists, she isolates. She has already poisoned the minds of some in this community. We will not let her poison our children too." Gasps filled the hall. My chest tightened. For a moment, I thought I might crumble under the weight of their lies, but then something inside me snapped. I rose slowly from my seat. All eyes turned toward me. My legs trembled, but my voice was clear. "You say I am dangerous," I said, my gaze fixed on my daughter. "You say I am cruel. Yet who is standing here tearing apart their own mother for the sake of pride and money? Who turned children against their grandmother? Who tried to erase decades of love with lies and legal threats?" The room was silent. My son shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. I took a step forward, my voice growing stronger. "I carried you, I fed you, I clothed you when you had nothing. I gave up dreams, time, health, and pieces of my soul so that you could stand here today. And when I grew old, when I needed even the smallest measure of kindness in return, what did you say to me? You said, 'We never asked you to sacrifice.'" The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Some people gasped, others whispered. My daughter's face went pale, my son's fists clenched. "I did not change my will to punish you," I continued. "I changed it because love should never be tied to greed. I created a foundation that will help children who know real abandonment, who know real hunger. Because unlike you, they will not spit on sacrifice." For a moment, the hall was utterly still. Then, slowly, a woman in the back stood and began to clap. Another joined, and another. The applause spread through the room, hesitant at first, then swelling into a wave. My children's faces twisted with fury as they realized the tide was turning. "If you are listening now, tell me honestly, should I have stayed quiet, bowed my head, and let their lies define me? Or was I right to stand tall, to speak the truth even when my own blood tried to silence me? Write your answer, because I know so many of you have faced the same cruelty." The meeting ended in chaos. My children stormed out, shouting that they would never forgive me. But I did not follow them. I stayed and spoke with those who remained, answering their questions, showing them the truth in my eyes. By the time I left, the night air felt different. For the first time, I was not alone. I had allies, people who had seen through the lies, but victory came with a cost. The next morning, my lawyer called. His voice was grave. "Margaret, your children are escalating. They have filed for a restraining order. They are claiming you are harassing them and the grandchildren." My knees buckled. A restraining order. It meant I could be legally barred from seeing the children, from even stepping near their home or school. It was the cruelest move yet, one that would sever me completely from the little ones who still looked at me with love. I steadied myself, my jaw set. Then we will fight, I said. If they want war, they will have it. That night, as I sat by the window, I thought of Lily's voice on the phone, whispering that she wanted to see me. I thought of the way she had reached toward me in the grocery store before being pulled away. They could take me to court. They could spread lies. They could try to break me in every possible way, but they would never erase the truth of that bond. I whispered into the darkness, I will not give up on you. And deep down, I knew that the battle ahead would be the fiercest yet, because when blood wages war against blood, no battlefield is safe, and no wound ever fully heals. The morning of the court hearing arrived like a storm cloud that refused to move. I barely slept the night before, replaying every word my lawyer had told me. My children were not only pursuing a restraining order but also petitioning for grandparent exclusion, claiming I was a disruptive and harmful presence in the lives of their children. When I walked into the courthouse, the air was thick with tension. The building smelled of polished wood and disinfectant. A place meant for order but carrying the weight of 1,000 broken families. I clutched my bag tighter, the silver brooch pinned to my collar once again, as if it could anchor me to the woman I was before all of this began. My lawyer, Mr. Lawson, was waiting near the courtroom doors. He was steady, calm, the kind of man who had seen countless families destroy themselves in front of a judge. Remember, he said gently, you are not here to defend yourself as a mother. You are here to protect your rights as a grandmother. Keep your voice steady. The truth will cut deeper than their lies. I nodded, though my hands shook. Inside the courtroom, I saw them. My son and daughter sat side by side at the petitioner's table, their spouses close by. My daughter-in-law would not even look at me, while my son-in-law smirked as though he were enjoying a performance. And then I saw them, my grandchildren, sitting with a court-appointed advocate. Little Lily's eyes searched the room until they found mine. She gave the smallest smile, one quickly hidden when her father nudged her shoulder. The sight tore me apart, but it also gave me strength. If you are listening now, pause and ask yourself this. If your grandchildren's smile was on the line, would you fight even if it meant standing alone against your own children? Write your answer, because that question haunted me in every heartbeat of this trial. The judge entered, a stern woman with sharp glasses and an expression that revealed nothing. She opened the proceedings, and immediately my son's lawyer launched into a speech about my pattern of harassment. They presented screenshots of my Facebook post, twisted into evidence that I was publicly humiliating them and endangering the children by stirring up hostility in the community. They claimed I had shown up uninvited at their home, that I had stalked them in public places like the grocery store. Every story was embellished, exaggerated, crafted to make me sound like an unstable old woman who could not let go. My daughter then took the stand. She spoke of her fear that I would one day take the children away, that I was creating division and confusion in their young minds. Her voice cracked in all the right places, her tears falling on cue. To anyone who did not know her, she looked like a daughter begging for protection. To me, she was an actress delivering the cruelest performance of her life. And then my son spoke. He looked at the judge with that same practiced earnestness and said, "We just want peace for our children. We want to raise them in love without interference. My mother refuses to respect boundaries. She is toxic, manipulative, and harmful." The words cut deeper than any knife. When it was my turn, I rose slowly, every movement heavy with the weight of the years that had brought me here. I looked at the judge and spoke not as a defendant but as a grandmother who refused to be erased. "I am not here to fight for money," I said. "I am not here to fight for pride. I am here because 2 little children know me as their grandmother. They know the warmth of my arms, the stories I tell them, the meals I cook with love. They know I have never harmed them. What they do not know is why the people they trust most are trying to tear that bond away." The courtroom was silent. I turned to my children, my voice shaking but firm. "You can hate me if you want. You can strip me of every possession, every memory, every piece of dignity. But you cannot tell me that love for a grandchild is dangerous. You cannot rewrite the truth of who I am in their lives." For the first time that day, my son would not look at me. My daughter's lips tightened, but her eyes flickered with something that looked like doubt. The judge recessed for a short break before announcing her decision. I stepped into the hallway, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. People were watching, whispering. Some faces showed pity, others curiosity, and a few even held quiet admiration. Mr. Lawson leaned close. You did well. Whatever happens, you showed the judge you are not the monster they are painting. But my relief was short-lived. As I walked toward the restroom, I overheard voices around the corner. It was my son and daughter-in-law. It's tougher than I thought, my son muttered. Then we push harder, his wife snapped. If this doesn't work, we'll claim she tried to kidnap Lily. Judges, eat that up. Do you want your mother ruining everything we've built? The words froze me in place. A false claim of kidnapping. My knees nearly gave out at the thought. They were not just trying to cut me off. They were plotting to destroy me completely. If you are listening, imagine this. Imagine hearing your own flesh and blood planning to accuse you of a crime you did not commit, one that could brand you forever. What would you do? Would you walk away to save yourself? Or would you fight even harder? Tell me, because I need to know I am not alone in this torment. The judge returned after the recess. The courtroom fell silent once more. She spoke clearly, her voice steady. The petition for a full restraining order is denied. The petition for grandparent exclusion is denied. However, considering the volatility between the parties, I am placing a temporary no-contact order for 30 days. During this time, Ms. Thompson, you are not to approach the children or their parents directly. After 30 days, we will reassess. Relief washed over me, but it was bitter. I had not lost completely, but I had not won either. 30 days, without seeing the children. 30 days for my son and daughter to spin more lies, to poison the little ones' minds further. As we left the courthouse, Lily caught my eye again. She pressed her hand against her heart, then quickly dropped it when her father tugged her arm. That small gesture was enough to keep me standing. Outside, reporters had gathered, sensing drama. Microphones were thrust toward me. Questions shouted. Mrs. Thompson, do you have a response to the judge's decision? How do you feel about being called toxic by your own children? I lifted my chin and said only one thing. The truth will always outlast lies. And then I walked away. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the calendar. 30 days. 30 days to prepare, to gather evidence, to protect myself from whatever new scheme they would invent. My lawyer advised me to stay quiet, to keep my head down, but my heart told me otherwise. I thought of Lily's hand pressed against her chest, of the silent plea in her eyes. She was the reason I could not simply wait. She was the reason I had to act. And so I made a decision that would change everything. If they wanted to destroy me in court, I would bring the truth to the court of public opinion first. Not a single Facebook post, not whispers. I would record my story in full. Every sacrifice, every betrayal, every attempt to erase me. I would tell the world what it means to be a mother discarded and a grandmother silenced. I set up a camera on my kitchen table. The red light blinked on. My reflection stared back at me in the lens, older, weary, but unbroken. And then I began to speak. The blinking red light on my kitchen camera became the beating heart of my final stand. I poured every ounce of pain, betrayal, and truth into that recording. For 3 straight hours, I spoke about the sacrifices I had made, the years I had devoted, the love I had given without condition, and the way my own children had turned me into a villain to justify their selfishness. I did not embellish. I did not dramatize. I simply told the truth, raw and unflinching. When I pressed stop, silence filled the room. For the first time in months, I felt lighter. The weight of secrets had shifted from my shoulders onto the record. Whether or not the world believed me, I had finally freed myself. Mr. Lawson, my lawyer, was cautious when I told him about the video. This is risky, he warned. Public pressure can influence perception, but it can also backfire. Are you ready for the consequences? I looked him in the eye and answered, the consequences have already happened. I have lost my children. I will not lose my truth. The video went online the next morning. I did not expect much at first. Perhaps a few views, a few sympathetic comments from old friends, but by nightfall, the numbers climbed into the thousands, then tens of thousands. Within 3 days, my face was everywhere. Headlines read, "Grandmother fights back after children disown her." Clips of me speaking with tears in my eyes spread like wildfire across social media platforms. Strangers began to share their own stories in response, writing, "This happened to me too," or "Thank you for saying what we could not." The world was listening. If you are hearing me now, know this. Stories carry power. My story carried me from silence into strength. Do not underestimate your own voice. Tell me, in the comments, if your children betrayed you, would you speak up or would you stay silent? I want to know what courage looks like in your world. The ripple effects were immediate. Neighbors who once crossed the street to avoid me began stopping by with casseroles and words of encouragement. Old colleagues sent letters of support. Even a local news station requested an interview. My story was no longer just mine. It had become a mirror for countless families facing hidden wars. But with every wave of support, the anger from my children intensified. I received a furious email from my son. Take the video down, or we will sue you for defamation. My daughter's voicemail came next. You are humiliating us. You are humiliating your grandchildren. How dare you drag private matters into the public eye? For once, I did not shake when I heard their threats. I had lived too long in their shadow, bending to their will. That part of me no longer existed. The cruelest decision I had made, the decision to finally sever myself from their control, was now unfolding in the light of day. Then came the most shocking twist. On the 5th day of the video going viral, I heard a knock at my door. When I opened it, 2 small figures stood there with wide eyes. Lily and Michael, my grandchildren. They had come with their court-appointed advocate, who explained that after watching part of my testimony, Lily insisted on speaking to me. Grandma, Lily whispered, throwing her arms around me. I told them you never hurt us. I told them you love us. Tears blurred my vision as I held her tight. Michael stood by, less expressive but with a look in his eyes that told me he believed too. Their voices, small yet powerful, became the final piece I needed. If you are listening, imagine this moment. The children you feared you had lost forever standing at your door, their trust unbroken. Would you collapse in relief, or would you rise with new fire? Comment below. I want to know how you would carry that weight. News traveled fast. Word spread that the grandchildren had defended me. The community that had once judged me now rallied. At the grocery store, strangers hugged me. At church, people whispered prayers in my name, and slowly, something remarkable happened. My children's polished masks began to crack. In public, they lashed out, calling me manipulative, accusing me of orchestrating everything for attention. But the more they spoke, the more desperate they sounded. People no longer believed their rehearsed speeches. They saw the truth shining through the cracks. And then came the final blow. My lawyer called with news that changed everything. The court is reopening the petition, he said. With the new testimony from the children's advocate and the overwhelming public support, there is now a motion to grant you official visitation rights. Your children cannot block you anymore. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I let out a laugh that was half sob, half release. Visitation rights. It was not the perfect ending, but it was a victory. It was recognition that my bond with my grandchildren mattered. It was proof that I had not fought in vain. That night, I recorded one final message, not for the court, not for my children, but for the thousands who had listened, watched, and shared. I sat at the same kitchen table, the brooch still pinned to my blouse, the weight of generations behind me. My children once told me, "We never asked you to sacrifice." And maybe they were right. They never asked, but I gave anyway. Because that is what love does. What they failed to understand is that love is not a transaction. Love cannot be measured in debts or dismissed when it becomes inconvenient. To every mother, father, grandmother, or grandfather listening to me now, if your family discards you, remember this. You are not disposable. Your sacrifices are not invisible. And your love, even when rejected, remains your greatest strength. I paused, letting the words sink in. If you believe in the power of truth, stay with me. Subscribe, share your own story, and remind the world that family is not defined by betrayal but by the love that survives it. The camera's red light flickered off, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Weeks later, the court officially granted me visitation. My grandchildren ran into my arms without hesitation. They clung to me as if afraid I would vanish again, and as I held them close, I realized the cruelest decision I had made to sever ties with my own children and expose everything had become the most necessary one. I had lost a son and a daughter, but I had gained back my voice, my dignity, and my grandchildren's trust, and perhaps that was enough.